Welcome to the Hogtide Rising channel and to episode 8 in the Bear Ambo Project. This is a continuation of episode 7. It's part 2 of a 2-part series about how I am preparing also for off-road travel. In this episode, we're going to powder coat the wheels, we're going to install a front bumper and winch, and we're going to modify and install a swing-away rear tire carrier. So let's get back to polar mobility research in Calgary, Alberta, and get back to work. Ever since the day I bought OSO, a retired City of Calgary ambulance, I have not been happy with the wheel covers. I just didn't think they were functional. I didn't think they would survive off-road travel. I figured they would fall off when they hit the first rut or the first bump. And they didn't look good. They were a cheap chrome-plated plastic. It just didn't match the nice coating that I had put on also at Tyro Coatings. But there's also problems with the original wheel. While the original wheels were very durable, very functional, and would handle off-road travel without any problems at all, well, that dull, drab paint job that they came with, well, it didn't really complement OSO's shiny new Tyro coating either. So I was looking for a cost-effective solution, something that would be really durable, really functional, that would work well and wouldn't have a problem with off-road travel, and would also look really good and complement OSO's brand new Tyro coating. I decided to powder coat the wheels, and not just the wheels that were visible, but all the wheels. That meant the dualies, the front, and the spare. All 7 wheels would be powder coated, and that would allow for me to easily rotate the tires without having to dismount tires. So the first step in the process was to dismount the tires from the rims. So it was off to Ward Tire in Calgary, Alberta, and they dismounted the tires and they agreed to store them until while the powder coating was being done. And then once the powder coating was done, we would return to Ward Tire and they would remount the wheels. After Ward Tire did their thing, it was off to Top Gun Coatings in Calgary, Alberta. Now I did a little bit of research into powder coating and I settled on Top Gun because I thought they offered the best package for the best price. And their package was a 4-step process. The first thing they would do is bake the wheel, and that would loosen all the paint, and most of the paint would then just flake off. But for the paint that didn't flake off, then they would sandblast the wheels, inside, outside, every side. Sandblast the wheels to make for a perfect surface for the powder coating. And then the powder coating. And not just one powder coating, but 2. Powder coat the wheels, and then they bake it. And then they powder coated the wheels a second time and baked it. And that I felt would make a really durable finish for wheels that were going to be used in some pretty rough country. And they also had a process to dry film coat the lug nuts. And so they would dry film them in black, and that would make a nice contrasting color against the wheels. Meanwhile, while the wheels were being powder coated, back at Polar Mobility Research, we were cleaning up the hubs. We were removing all the surface rust, we were wire brushing them and cleaning them off all nice. And then we put on a couple of coats of trim-clad, gloss black, rust preventative enamel. And we felt that that would provide adequate protection from rocks and possible chipping and things like that. Trimclad makes a good product, and that's what we went with. And then, after we picked up the wheels at Top Gun, we brought them back to Polar Mobility Research and put them back on. One concern I had was with the dualies on the rear. I was a little concerned that maybe dually to dually might get a little bit of rubbing and you might wear off the powder coating. So what we did was we put good quality washers on each of the bolts, lug bolts, in between each of the dual wheels.
Yeah, they're a 1/2 inch grade 8. They won't collapse, they won't shrink.
We feel that that will work really well. For those of you that watched my previous video, you know I have a lot of experience getting stuck. I got stuck in the snow in Western Canada, and when I went down to Baja, well, I got stuck in the sand. And not just once, not just twice, not even just 3 times. I think I, all told, 4 times, 5 times, and I might even forgot about a time. But I had a lot of experience getting stuck in sand, and as I mentioned, in snow. So I knew I needed to get an adequate recovery system to assist me in these misadventures. So the recovery system that I would require for my adventures and misadventures would require a heavy-duty, high-capacity winch, and also some form of a bumper to mount it on the front of the ambulance. The problem being that my ambulance is mounted on a heavy-duty 3500 Chev Express cutaway van, and there's just not a lot of winch bumper mounts available for such a vehicle. There's lots and lots of bumpers available for your standard pickup truck, but not as many for a van. However, while watching a Foresty Forest video, and if you haven't already discovered Foresty Forest, well, follow the link that's up here, and it'll take you to his channel, and I do recommend it. However, he has a 3500 Chevy Express van. It's not an ambulance, but it's the same front end, and he was able to find a winch bumper setup that would work, and this was available at Clydesdale Vans in Kamloops, British Columbia. So it's a custom winch bumper, and it's designed and manufactured in Canada, and it's designed to perfectly fit on the Chevy Express heavy-duty 3500 van. And I ordered it complete with a worn 12,000 pound capacity winch and Bidura rope instead of wire. The installation of the winch after I received it from Clydesdale Vans was done at Polar Mobility Research and very capably completed by Polar's service manager, Eddie. I've also added a couple of accessories. I've added a Factor 55 flat link shackle, which will allow me to have a closed system winching for safety. And I've also added a couple of Ot-Mat D-rings. The next issue that we addressed was the spare tire and where to carry it. Now, the ambulance came with a nice cabinet with an outside door at the back of the ambulance on the driver's side for the spare tire. But that's all it had room for, was the spare tire, and I figured that space would be better used, maybe to carry tools or to carry recovery gear. But then, where to put the spare tire? So some people have taken a spare tire and they've put a special mount up on the cab of the ambulance or the van or whatever and put the spare tire up there. But that's relatively inaccessible. It would be very hard to get it down in a pinch, especially when you're an amputee like I am. So I didn't really give that option a lot of thought. Another option would be to mount the spare tire on the front bumper of the van. However, the problem with that, well, aside from the fact that there's already a winch at the front, but the other problem is a spare tire would cut down airflow, and that would be cutting down airflow to your radiator for engine cooling and also to your transmission cooler. So I didn't think that was a good option. So well, the only option left was to put it at the back of the ambulance. But that would require some form of a swing-away tire carrier so that I would still have access to the 2 back doors. So it was decided to go with the swing-away spare tire carrier. But we're looking for something like that for an ambulance. That's not a very big market to put swing-away spare tire carriers on the back of ambulances. So it came down to we would either design and build custom mount here at Polar Mobility, or look for a manufactured option that could be modified. Unfortunately, while out shopping at Capit in Calgary, a truck accessory shop in Calgary, I saw a display unit. It was an OR-Fab Swing-A-Way tire carrier that was designed for a Jeep Wrangler. And we looked at it and did some rough measurements and figured that it would probably fit onto the ambulance. However, when I approached Capit, they said they were no longer handling the OR-Fab product line. It wasn't for sale. They didn't have any units in stock to sell. So I told them if they weren't selling them anymore, then they didn't really need a display unit, and perhaps they would sell me their display model, which they agreed to do at a sizable discount. So that was a pretty good deal. So I bought it, took my discount, and brought it back to Polar Mobility Research, where Jeff Schmode, my friend, and the big bear at Polar Mobility took a good hard look at it and started figuring out a way to design a custom mount that would allow the carrier to be installed on the back of the ambulance. And as you'll see in the video, it required him to strip away some paneling at the back and get access to the original ambulance frame of 1-inch square tubing. And once he had that access, he was then able to, a combination of riveting and welding and bolting, he was able to build a mounting system that would fit in there and be nicely covered up by the paneling when it was replaced, and that would allow the carrier to be mounted, in effect, directly to the frame of the ambulance. So you're not going to get a much more sturdy mount than that. Also applied the same idea to the latch. The latch isn't all that big, but he stripped away the paneling on the driver's side door and put in, welded, riveted the necessary metal to provide for a very secure mount. So now the Swing-A-Way carrier is mounted to the frame at the hinge and at the latch end. So it's bulletproof. And as Jeff likes to say, it ain't going anywhere. Well, that's good to know. But once we had the carrier mounted and we went to put the spare tire on it, we realized that the spin-off spindle that the carrier came with wasn't really long enough to accommodate the dually wheels, which are quite a bit deeper than regular wheels. So Jeff had to modify the spindle. He had to take it off and get a new one that would be a few inches longer that would allow the tire to be securely mounted onto the frame.
The rims on this particular vehicle are about 2 inches deeper than it was originally designed for. So we've had to modify the thread piece here that holds the tire on, and we cut this piece off and welded in a new piece and added about 3 inches. And we had to modify this locking bar that he puts a padlock on so the honest people don't steal his tire. And we took the other one off here and we reinforced it and made it a little bit heavier. So it's about another 1.5 inches longer too. So when we put the tire on, he'll be able to torque it up. And then we put an extra locking nut so it'll be secure and a padlock. And then once we have it on, you'll see what it looks like.
So that was all done and we're ready to roll. Now the carrier itself was designed to carry 175 pounds. So we had to make sure that the tire, the Rotopax fuel cans that it came with, and a high lift winch would all fit quite nicely. So the tire and the rim were about 74 pounds, and the 3 US gallon Rotopax containers with fuel would weigh in around 50 pounds, and the high lift jack was in around 29 pounds. So all in all, it totaled out to a little over 150 pounds, not quite 155 pounds. So we knew we still had 20 pounds of safety. So everything's going to be good. The Swing-A-Way carrier will work well, and it'll carry everything it is required to do. And having the tire mounted on a Swing-A-Way carrier frees up that spare tire carrier to carry tools and recovery gear. So the idea is to see if all of that gear can be packed into this cabinet. So let's take a look and see what happens. There you got it. Take a spare tire out of the spare tire cabinet. Look at all the room you've got for necessary tools and recovery gear. This has got to be interpreted as a definite win for storage capacity. So that's it. Spare tire carrier installation completed, and plenty of room for recovery gear and tools in what used to be the spare tire cabinet. Well, thank you very much for sticking around and watching the entire video, and I certainly hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, how about giving it a big thumbs up and share it with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you subscribe, you better hit that bell, and then you will get advance warning of all my upcoming videos. It won't cost you a penny. It'll really help the channel. It'll make this old van lifer real happy, and it might just give me that kick in the ass that I need to create more content. And I hope you decide to come along on this journey and join us in the next video.